Good afternoon. The May 8, 2019 Prosper Portland Board of Commissioners meeting is now convened. Pam, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Platt?
Here.
Commissioner Gambetti?
Here.
Commissioner Moreland-Capuya?
Here.
Commissioner Myers?
Here.
Chair Cruz?
Here.
Thank you.
All right, we'll start off with Commissioner reports. Peter?
Yes, good afternoon. Thursday, April 18th, grabbed a lunch with Curtis Robinhold, the Executive Director of Port of Portland. Friday, April 19th, attended the Hacienda CDC Board Retreat. And then Friday, May 3rd, led the Hacienda CDC Board meeting.
Commissioner Gambetti?
On April 4th, I attended a meeting regarding the 100 Multnomah project. On April 9th, an executive committee meeting for the Broadway corridor. And on April 24th, I attended a women's leadership luncheon put on by Earl Blumenauer and featured keynote speaker, U.S. Representative Lauren Underwood. It's a really great event.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Myers?
On April 17th, I attended the State of the County for Washington County. April 19th, attended the City Club, State of the Region with Lynn Peterson. April 23rd, Broadway Corridor Steering Committee. April 25th, Washington Park Reservoir Community Benefit Plan Oversight Committee. April 26th, Metro Community Leaders Forum out at the zoo. And April 29th, State of the City with the Mayor, which you attended as well.
Great, thank you. Commissioner, okay, thank you. All right, I have just a few things. Had a Portland Economic Investment Corporation board meeting on April 22nd. Classroom Law Project dinner on the 25th. The Mayor's State of the City event with Commissioner Myers on April 29th. On April 30th, the Portland Business Alliance annual meeting and breakfast. On May 1st, the City Council hearing regarding E-zone reauthorization. And on May 3rd, our monthly meeting with Mayor Wheeler. Executive Director Branham.
Good afternoon, Chair Cruz and Commissioners. It's been a full month with great events like the Technology Association of Oregon's annual award gala on April 17th and ERCO's annual gala on May 2nd. I was also able to attend the Champions Barbershop grand opening event on Sunday, April 14th. Champions Barbershop is the first of 3 family-owned, family-friendly businesses to open at Alberta Commons in Northeast Portland. Also coming to the Alberta Commons are Greenhouse Gallery, slated to open later this month, and Cason's Fine Meats will be opening in June, right in time for the Independence 4th of July barbecue season. A grand opening celebration for Alberta Commons is planned for Saturday, June 22nd, and so hopefully people will be there. I think there's a lot of there's going to be a lot of events on that day. But you can find out more information on the businesses located at Alberta Commons, and you can go to alberta-commons.com for more information. Along with Commissioner Joanne Hardesty, I attended the first annual Mercatus Momentus event on Thursday, April 25th. The event celebrated the first Momentus Awards, acknowledging successful Mercatus member businesses and the launch of the Mercatus magazine. There are copies here in the lobby, and if you haven't seen them, we'll be excited to share them. They will be available widely. I was honored to present our award to Travel Portland for being Collaborator of the Year. We have a very strong partnership, and it was great to be able to thank them and publicly recognize them in that way. To see the full list of awardees and some great pictures from the event, and to learn more about the more than 400 diverse businesses now featured on the initiative website, you can visit mercatuspdx.com. I'd like to recognize Amanda Park and Tori Campbell and the entire team for putting on a fabulous event. It also included all of our Inclusive Business Resource Network partners. It was really wonderful to be there. So a lot of hard work went into it, and appreciate those efforts. Prosper Portland also announced that 9 local businesses will be receiving the first pilot Inspiring Diversity grants to support their work to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion within their firms. The matching grants range from $1,700 to $8,000 per firm and will go to companies in the technology, athletic and outdoor, and green cities industry clusters, which all provide high-quality employment opportunities for Portlanders. So congratulations to those 9 businesses who competed amongst 40 applicants, which we thought was very successful considering that this was the first of its kind. So we want to recognize Pam Neal and Sue Ball for their leadership with that initiative. Finally, in terms of announcements, Prosper Portland issued requests for proposals for 2 key sites here in Old Town Chinatown. The quarter block on the corner of Northwest 4th and Burnside, right adjacent to the Chinatown Gate, and Block 25, which is located between Northwest Flanders and Gleason Street and between 3rd and 4th. The properties are being offered for purchase and redevelopment to further community development goals that are articulated within the action plan, including honoring the multicultural history of the area, activating the neighborhood, and promoting a welcoming environment. RFP responses are due back to Prosper Portland by 5 p.m. on Friday, June 14th. For more information, you can go to prosperportland.us/OTCT, Old Town Chinatown. And I want to recognize Eric Jacobson and Bernie Karofsky for their leadership and appreciate all of the community members who participated in giving input to really make sure that that was a high-quality request for proposals. So a couple things coming up. The next meeting of the North-Northeast Community Development Initiative will be held from 6 to 8 p.m. this evening at New Song Community Church. For more information, you can go to prosperportland.us/events. A number of us will also be attending the annual Celebrate Trade event that the Oregon International Business Awards, the Celebrate Trade, which is the International Business Awards event and Counselor Corps Scholarship Gala on Monday, May 13th. You can find out more information about this great event that recognizes the important role that trade plays and the relationships that we have with people across the world at OregonCounselorCorps.us. And I encourage everyone to attend a screening of the upcoming Native Wisdom documentary series on Saturday, May 18th at the Northwest Film Center. It's produced by local nonprofit Wisdom of the Elders. The short series explores how climate change is affecting Native first foods and culture in Oregon while celebrating the Native artists, scientists, and cultural leaders who are guiding people into a new era. Wisdom of the Elders was one of 4 winners of the Portland Film Office post-production grant in 2018. So we're glad to see it come and be screened. And for more information, you can go to northwestfilm.org. And of course, this is your final reminder that to attend My People's Market, the trade show is on May 31st, and the family-friendly community event is on June 1st. At the U.S. Post Office site here in Northwest Portland. You can find out more information at prosperportland.us/events. So on to 2 great new hires. We're so excited to have 2 new members of the Prosper Portland team. We're thrilled to welcome Christine Velasquez, who's our new development team project manager. She's starting today, so welcome to the team. She comes to Prosper Portland from the Bay Area, where she's been working with small businesses in the development community on commercial real estate, business district revitalization, and economic development for the past 15 years. She most recently worked as Director of Client Services for Meridian, which is a real estate development company. She's worked as a Senior Development Officer for the San Jose Redevelopment Agency, where she managed the retail recruitment program and played an instrumental role in establishing numerous new tenants in downtown San Jose and neighborhood business districts, including the San Pedro Square Market. So we are just delighted to have her. She's going to be leading up our efforts in affordable commercial tenanting, and just couldn't be more pleased to have her. Welcome to Prosper Portland and welcome to Portland. And it is also my pleasure to to introduce Adam Lane, who is our new Chief Financial Officer. So Adam comes to us from EcoTrust. He served as CFO and COO there for 17 years. In addition to leading the finance, accounting, IT, and business operations team, his work at EcoTrust frequently involved finding market-based solutions with mission-driven objectives. He oversaw a loan portfolio, retail and office leases, and real estate development projects, including the Red on Salmon Street. EcoTrust co-founded the country's first environmental bank, started the nation's first ecosystem investment fund, and created new tools to improve triple bottom line decision-making, which are all really innovative approaches that will serve him well and serve us well here at Prosper Portland. Before working at EcoTrust, he worked as a finance manager for Intel for 5 years, and he was a manager at PricewaterhouseCoopers for 6 years. He holds a BA from Pomona College and an MBA from Stanford Graduate School of Business. So we're really delighted to have his expertise given where we're trying to go with our financial sustainability plan and new kinds of public-private partnerships. So welcome to Adam as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And welcome, Christine and Adam. We're excited to have you. Great. All right, so next up, we have the minutes. Would someone, first of all, were there any comments to the minutes for our last meeting? Then would someone like to make a motion to approve the minutes for April 10th?
So moved.
Thank you. Do you have a second? Second. Thank you. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, minutes are approved. Thank you. Do we have any public comments for items that are not on the agenda? No? Okay. All right, we'll go on to item 6, which is an action item endorsing the preferred concept to inform the redevelopment of the Broadway corridor. June Reyes and Sarah Harple will present. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Harple. I'm a project manager in the Development and Investment Department.
My name is June Reyes. I'm the project coordinator for Broadway Corridor Project.
Also joining us in the audience today and available for any questions are representatives from the ZGF architecture team as well as Continuum, our development advisor. So we are here for an exciting milestone in the Broadway Corridor project, which is a recommendation or an endorsement for a preferred concept to move forward for further refinement to inform the development strategy for the Broadway Corridor and specifically the master plan for the post office property. Today, we're going to walk through at a high level some of the stakeholder engagement and input that has led us to this point and informed the evaluation recommendation before you, as well as some specifics about the preferred concept and some recommended areas for key refinement moving forward, and then a quick snapshot of next steps. As a quick reminder, this shown in green is the study area for the Broadway Corridor development plan. It includes several Prosper Portland-owned properties, and then more specifically, we have a requirement for a Central City master plan for the United States Post Office property, which we jointly own with the Portland Housing Bureau. We have been engaged in the development planning process since June of 2017, and we've been spending about the last 11 months or so informing the placemaking vision and early concepts and continue to refine those concepts. We are now at the point which we call Phase C2, which is the evaluation selection of a preferred concept that would allow us to move forward for approximately 4 months to refine that concept before going into our formal master plan approval process. I'm going to turn over to June to provide some context around our community engagement activities and the input we've received.
So creating the kind of welcoming neighborhood that expands both affordability and opportunity has really required some intentional outreach for this project. And so I'm here to provide the context for how we're showing up in community as Prosper Portland, as well as how community has been shaping the outcomes of this project up till now. So this slide kind of gives you a snapshot of what engagement has looked like. So I wanted to point out 2 things. So the first is the 19 committee meetings. And so throughout this project, we were very intentional to engage our steering committee early on. And so they've been with us for the past 2 years. Up to now, we've had probably about over 1,000 total attendees at public meetings specifically for the Broadway Corridor project. And on the bottom, that shows it shows sort of the overall ethnicity, race and ethnicity of all of our participants in terms of data that we have for public meetings. And what I want to point out is that the focus groups and roundtables, so you see the number 10 over there, have been such an effective tool for increasing the racial diversity of our participants, really kind of getting in and having conversations about the project with them, and specifically enabling us to reach communities of color or folks within communities of color, hearing from individuals with disabilities and hearing from folks at lower income levels who traditionally haven't participated as much in these type of developments. So I kind of want to situate us in this, in our milestone today. So on the bottom left-hand side, you'll see that we're at selecting a preferred concept. And so I kind of want to come back to this process in general. So over the past 2 years, we've come through several milestones and taking time to pause at each one and weave back in our stakeholders, having a public meeting at specific milestones. Because when we're thinking about an equitable project and doing things differently, the change really would emerge from an accountable process, one that's accessible and one that's collaborative. And so that's kind of why you see us continue to show up at these critical milestones. And before we dive into the preferred concept, I want to ground us in two sort of tools that have emerged from this process and through collaborating with community. And so the guiding principles have served as a framework throughout this process. So that's from, the developer selection. So the guiding principles informed what the evaluation criteria for that was. It informed the 3 concepts that came out for this site, and has also informed the evaluation criteria for choosing a preferred concept. And so these are principles that have been developed with the steering committee, and they will continue to guide our priorities in the way that we kind of wrap up this phase of the project. And the second one is each development concept has been guided by the following principles on the screen around designing for racial and social equity. And these have come out of from our design team, and they're the result of interviews and public engagement in earlier phases of the project. And this is another way that folks have really already impacted this project in terms of the options that we've had and we've brought to the table for this project.
Moving into the concepts that were under consideration and the recommendation before you today, to quickly recap, I think last time we were before you, we had 3 refined concepts that were a result of this engagement process and the principles that June just walked through. Key aspects of those are the play concept is a strong extension of the park blocks. It offers a flexible open space that could accommodate a variety of public uses and programming. The nature concept looked to break away from the traditional public grid and really integrate a strong sense of an urban forest experience. And then the discovery concept was really a series of dispersed, more urban plazas and alleyways, and had a strong orientation to the integration of Union Station, or kind of distinct variations among those concepts. We have held development density programming assumptions constant through this phase of planning, and are now continuing to refine that on a single concept. To quickly walk through the concept evaluation process, so we collected and compiled input from a number of different kind of advisory bodies, so asking the steering committee to provide us input on both their preferred concept as well as how they evaluated the concepts against the guiding principles and the project goals, asking our public partners and our bureau partners to evaluate the concepts of how they felt like it aligned to the Central City Master Plan criteria and the different priorities and policies of the infrastructure bureaus who might be investment partners in this project. And then to Continuum as our development advisor, advising us on development feasibility with a particular eye to feasibility as well. We collected this data and provided to the executive committee in a discussion on April 9th, where advisory input then informed the recommendation before you today that is coming from Executive Director Branham, Director Callahan from the Portland Housing Bureau, and Kyle Chiswick on behalf of the Mayor's Office. We also had the benefit of Commissioner Gambetti's advice as well through that discussion to inform where we are today. So the recommendation before you is to basically base the preferred concept on the play concept and the kind of public realm configuration, with some key areas for continued refinement that we wanted to flag as a result of the input that we have received to date in our evaluation discussions. So one is around the green loop, of continuing to refine what the vision of the green loop is, look for opportunities for cost savings, and how we minimize the impact of this change in grade on the adjacent development parcels, and really have a mindful eye to accessibility through universal design principles of that public space. Continuing to look at how we integrate Union Station into the development concept. So this was a key attribute of the discovery concept that people responded very favorably to. So how do we integrate that same benefit into this concept, and creating a safe and active public realm, including connecting underneath the Broadway Bridge ramp. Looking at public programming and activation. So the benefit of this concept is it does provide us that flexible platform for a lot of community engagement and activation, but that does require an ongoing funding stream and partnership to ensure that the quality of activities in that space is ongoing. And then a stronger integration of the natural environment. So this was a compelling component of the nature concept, and so how do we look to integrate some of those attributes into this concept? And then finally, looking at phasing and density and parcelization. And so how do we, again, I think the discovery concept did this well, is it broke down a finer grain of development opportunity that could lend itself strongly to affordable commercial opportunities, wealth creation investment opportunities, as well as the feasibility of the concept. And so continuing to refine and look at that. We are also today, in addition to kind of your consideration of the recommendation, also looking for further input on what areas of refinement might be important to you moving forward. This is kind of a sneak peek at some early thoughts around what some of those refinements can look like. So you'll see a modification of how the green loop resolves itself in the site and has a stronger integration within the public space, the park that's shown there, and creating a stronger sense of place within that area, as well as how we alleviate some of the pressures that the green loop has on the adjacent development and the feasibility, and allowing for stronger integration and activation of Union Station area under the Broadway Bridge. So we're continuing to work through this. This diagram is already somewhat outdated as we're continuing to think through it. We want to show kind of what some of that response would look like. We've also heard feedback that I'll discuss in a second of what is really making this place special. So continue to dig into what does Johnson look like, what does the green loop and the integration of park really look like in the central space. And then similarly looking at kind of what are the functions of these different spaces, how do we have kind of a sense of place and identity, and so starting to kind of think through the concept in a placemaking lens and revisiting some of the early visioning feedback we heard from stakeholders at the very beginning of this process in partnership with Project for Public Spaces, as well as how we integrate some of the aspects of our public benefit and community benefit priorities that have a nexus to physical space, but also live above and beyond that, and how they might be situated here. Just as a reference point, Executive Director Branham mentioned My People's Market, and that's kind of an early manifestation of what the kind of character and activation of some of these spaces may look like in terms of small business and market activation. So we're looking forward to that event to kind of test and symbolize kind of the intention of space here. And then quickly walking through kind of the evaluation input and how it's informed the recommendation before you. Sort of snapshot of how the various different advisory bodies, when asked to rank the concept, the play concept ranked either first or a very close second by all parties. The discovery concept probably had the widest range of opinions of people liking it and having some concerns with it, so there was kind of the most disparate reaction to that concept. Specifically, the steering committee looked at the concepts evaluated against the guiding principles. Both play and nature performed the strongest. Play had a strong alignment to the principles around connectivity, equity, and vibrancy. We did receive some feedback that evaluating accountable and prosperous as guiding principles based on just the information available from a physical concept was challenging. So we do kind of have the asterisks around there. There are aspects of this project we are continuing to refine that live beyond the public or the physical manifestation. And the steering committee provided us input in terms of what was working. I think it responded well to the principles of equitable design that June shared earlier in terms of having an equitable space that had a platform for a wide range of activities. It also had the smallest amount of investment required in public infrastructure based on very early cost estimating that had the most likely result in additional resources being available for other community benefits we would like to deliver within the project. There was a positive response to the public realm in terms of its connection to adjacent uses. In terms of what is not working and what is areas for continued refinement, again, kind of what makes this place iconic and feel special, what's its sense of identity, and then the close link to certainty around kind of active programming and curation of that public space, so you can make that successful or not. Our Bureau partners provided good guidance as well to inform the evaluation, in particular the Parks Bureau, with their strong preference for this flexible space that could offer active recreation and other community programming that they felt is lacking or not kind of currently adequate within the Central City area. I think their strong preference informed that. There has been, I think, some indication that this is really a sports field, and that can be one use within this, but it is really intended to be more flexible and have a variety of community programming that can occur within this space. They also provide a lot of guidance that's continuing to inform refinement of the Green Loop, and how does this feel like a civic attractor that's welcoming to a wide range of people. And then in terms of the general public, some of what's working is the space had a sense of it felt equitable, connected, and welcoming to a wide range of people. But on the areas of improvement, continue to look at safety and activation, again, of the public realm and the integration of Union Station, being as strong as some of the other concepts, and the sense of identity. So that's informing the recommendations going forward. Also, to support the evaluation process, we did a very preliminary level of cost estimating. So looking at the public realm investment and, again, holding the development assumptions constant. This also helped us in terms of grade change, and the cut and fill also really helped inform the feasibility and how do we minimize some of those impacts that were showing up in the concepts that would help with implementation. So I think this also was a useful tool for continuing to also provide their evaluation advice into which concepts they felt were most feasible for implementation. One significant caveat is that the Green Loop costs will have the highest level of uncertainty, given the kind of the very preliminary nature of the design concepts at the time. And so we're continuing to refine this, recognizing that this has a potential for significant cost, and how do we refine that while staying true to the vision of that place. So again, looking at just the public realm investments, we see a need for investment ranging from $50 to $75 million in the public realm, with play being at the lower end of the three concepts. And then in terms of next steps, we continue to work with the post office around relocation of their retail operations within the site that allows us to move forward with demolition of the existing building and additional site preparation work. We'll spend the next 4 months refining the preferred concept, and we're initiating, beginning next month, the land use review process with design advice requests and briefings before Design Commission, with doing our formal submittal this fall, and then beginning to negotiate the various agreements related to the project, our development agreement, our community benefits agreement, beginning this summer. As we refine the concept, we will also continue to work with our Bureau partners on refining the cost estimates and a coordinated city investment package for the project. Currently, there's approximately $100 million gap. We will continue to refine the cost estimates, but about half of that is attributed to the affordable housing, and we're looking for the Portland Housing Bureau as our partner to help identify those sources. The other half of that gap will be continue to work with our Infrastructure Bureau partners on how we fund that. And then in June, we will be back with an update on the community benefits process and some of the priorities that we're hearing and how that informs the other aspects of our agreement on the concept refinement going forward. That concludes our remarks and the recommendation before you, and again, any direction you have on areas of further refinement as well. Put those up for reference.
Okay. Would folks like to discuss first or hear public testimony first? We have a couple of folks here to testify. Why don't we go ahead and have the testimony, and then if you could come back, that'd be great. All right. So Jay Richmond with Oregon Tradeswomen Association, it looks like, and Glenn Traeger with Pearl. He's a Pearl neighborhood resident. If you could both join us, that'd be great. Welcome. Thanks for coming.
Guess I'll go first. Hello, my name is Jay Richmond, Workforce Equity Manager of Oregon Tradeswomen and a leader of the Healthy Communities Coalition, also known as HCC. HCC is a broad coalition of community-based racial justice organizations, workforce equity organizations, private and public sector unions, and housing advocates. We formed 3 years ago to find ways to work together to shape development in the city so that it benefits all Portlanders, starting with the people of color and working class residents who have been left out of post-recession economic growth. We are making sure that when the public invests heavily in a project, as we are with Broadway Corridor, we get a broad return on that investment in the form of community benefits. These community benefits are best delivered via a strong, legally binding community benefits agreement as demonstrated on successful regional projects such as Kelly Butte and the Interstate Maintenance Facility. We've been working with Prosper leadership for the last year to lay groundwork for an innovative community benefits agreement that builds racial and economic justice through equity in construction, workforce, and contracting, a high number of units of deeply affordable housing with universal design to support people with disabilities, living wage jobs for the service and operations workers who will work on the site long-term, a mitigation fund for Cully, best practices for sustainability and transportation connections. Your approval of this preferred concept is an essential step for the project moving forward and for us to succeed in negotiating a community benefits agreement with Prosper and the developer. We hope that you'll approve the preferred concept and support our community vision for the Broadway Corridor. That's it. Thank you.
My name is Glenn Traeger. I live in the Pearl District. I'm a member of the Pearl Neighborhood Association Board and the Planning and Transportation Committee. These comments just represent my own comments, do not represent the feelings of the Pearl Neighborhood Association. I realize this project is still in the planning phase, but enough is known for me to offer several brief comments. This is a big project, 2,400 units and 4,000 jobs. Approximately 9,000 new occupants will be moving into the Pearl. My condominium, the Bridgeport, has 125 units, which is typical for the Pearl. This project is equivalent to 20 Bridgeports with the addition of 4,000 jobs. We are at the stage where we need a transportation study. Circulation alternatives and the density of development are now being considered. The Lovejoy Broadway intersection at the Broadway Bridge is a major bottleneck. At rush hour, traffic can back up several blocks to 405 on Lovejoy, causing significant delays to the streetcar. For this project to be successful, transportation impacts must be actively considered now. It is important that the successful energy of the Pearl be somehow transferred to Old Town, Chinatown. This project can become the conduit if developed correctly. Millions of dollars have been spent in Old Town, Chinatown in the past with little success. We cannot let this happen again. Proper coordination between the Pearl, Old Town, Chinatown, and the Broadway Corridor project needs to be done to achieve this critical task. Most successful neighborhoods have an anchor, not only for residents, but to attract out-of-town visitors that add robustness and diversity to the neighborhood. Think of the South Pearl and Powell's Bookstore. The railroad and the Greyhound stations could be these anchors. These two buildings need attention and should be incorporated into the project development. Tennis and basketball courts won't meet the recreational demands for a project consisting of 9,000 new occupants. A regional multi-story recreation center such as a YMCA is needed for this development. There is a large differential in height across the development site. Currently, this creates unused dead zones under the Lovejoy and Broadway viaducts. Can I have like a minute or so?
Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Currently, this causes a dead zones under the Lovejoy and Broadway viaducts. Some will say this is a problem area. Let's make this a design challenge and turn this area into, and turn the area under the ramps into a project opportunity. This is a big project in a small space. It will require a big vision and above average cooperation between the city, affected neighborhoods, and the developer to be successful. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thanks for coming today. Appreciate your comments. All right, Sarah and June, would you like to come back? Sure, yeah. And is someone here from ZGF? Maybe? Oh, yes, Noah, hi. Great. Would you like to? Yeah, that'd be great. So, comments, questions?
Well, can you just address the transportation study issue that came up?
Yeah. Adequacy of infrastructure is one of the criteria that we must demonstrate through the Central City Master Plan review process. So the Bureau of Transportation will be interested in how the functionality of adjacent intersections is impacted by the development. And so that is one of the things that we will be mindful of.
Other comments, questions? What about, so the renderings, the massing, that's not, obviously not sort of set in stone?
It isn't. We needed to do that in order to show the relationship between the total real estate on the site and the different plan approaches. We're in the process of refining that now with information from Continuum about some market assumptions, Eco Northwest, and then our own judgment about likely phasing scenarios. So it'll start to get more and more locked in, but even once the Central City Master Plan is confirmed, we'll have some range of flexibility about the buildings that are going to be developed over many years afterwards by parties who we may not even know yet.
Other comments? Peter?
I asked this question in a different session, but maybe for the benefit of the other board members, what were some of the inspirations for this particular play concept that you drew as designers from around the world, around different cities in the United States?
Sure. Certainly, I think we looked at Denver Union Station, which Continuum, our developer, was involved with as a multimodal hub. And a sort of centrally located urban district, mixed-use urban district. I think there were a number of other places from Copenhagen to other places where there was a green loop or some other kind of linear open space or the High Line in New York, different places like that. So there's a wide range of different places that individual elements or the big idea may have taken inspiration from.
Could you address some of the comments about the use of the actual play space, the fields, right, in the middle?
Sure.
Just from living back east in New York City for some time, you know, those types of interstitial places are widely used, and
right.
You know, particularly in a dense urban environment, are pretty highly prized.
We've really struggled with how to portray this space because at the fundamental idea is that it's flexible and that it can do many things at different times of the year, different times of the week, different times of the day even. And that was really a response to community feedback that places that can be and are programmed tend to be the ones that invite the greatest spectrum of Portlanders and people from around the region to them. And yet, we don't want it to just be one use, the same use every day for the same people. So how you show that in a rendering is a challenge, because when we had sports fields on there, people assumed, oh, it's always sports, and I don't play sports, and so it's not for me. And then when we took the sports lines off, people just said, well, it's just grass. We don't need more grass. So I think you'll see a little bit more information about that. And honestly, one of the things that we need to spend time with staff working on is some ideas about how it may be programmed. And we're not going to have a full programming plan by the time we finish this master plan, but we may have a little bit more information about what could happen here, what is appropriate based on the feedback we've received from the steering committee and the public, but also what are some peer places, to your question, some inspiration places outside of Portland that might help people to understand the idea for this flexible space.
Other comments, questions?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, first of all, thank you for all your hard work to get to this important milestone. One of the things, so the play, looking at some of the feedback you got and how you summarized it, I know you got a lot of feedback and you guys did a really good job of trying to filter through it all. One thing that stuck out to me, though, is the criteria of prosperous and accountable, which didn't score the highest. but then when you show the cost estimates of public investment, it was the lower. So what do you think informed people's ratings of prosperous and accountable, those criteria?
And I would also, again, note the feedback we heard that evaluating those two in particular was challenging. So I think accountable speaks to kind of our agreement structure and our ongoing oversight. And so that's something that lives beyond the physical space. And it really, I think, will continue to be informed of how we structure our agreements moving forward. So I think that was just challenging for people to respond to. I would have to go back into the data of exactly what the difference was between them. But I think for the most part, we had very minimal feedback across that category. So I would say we have the same number of data points across all of the guiding principles. And in terms of prosperous, I think that really speaks to some of the programming that we have not yet at that point in time had not dug into, of kind of where are there opportunities for small businesses to locate, what is that Main Street feel, and so at the kind of early conceptual level, we just hadn't dug into that yet. It also speaks to some of the community benefit elements of the community benefits agreement around how do we make contracting opportunities available, and so it also, I think, lives beyond just the physical realm more than some of the other guiding principles.
So is there anything within the three concepts that you can glean or transfer, or I don't know what people might have been responding to where they saw one of the three options?
I think get back to prosperous, I think the Discovery, I believe, was the one that ranked the highest, and because it had the smaller increment development and the sense of cultural alleyways, it felt like it read to most people that it had a stronger support for small business opportunities of a wider spectrum. That doesn't mean we can't accommodate that within others, but I think that was kind of a reaction that we saw. I'm trying to think as we sorted through. That really
People didn't have the public investment dollars.
No, I think
when they
that really came through.
I can help, I think, just because jog your memory, or we can remember this together. So we had shared the numbers at that point.
Yes.
But I think, to Sarah's point, what people really loved about Discovery is Union Station and the idea that you could have Union Station well activated. And so I think people saw a lot of business opportunities adjacent to that. And so that ended up being the one that ranked the best from my recollection on prosperous. I think the other thing that we heard that the design team has started working on and borrowing from nature is just the degree of natural space. And so I do think that, I think the steering committee, when we brought this back, as well as the recommended changes, I think felt like their feedback had been well incorporated in that Union Station and the kind of greening of the design really addressed what had been some things that they loved about the other two concepts that we're not moving forward with, or that we weren't going to move forward with.
I also think the cost estimate showed up in the evaluation of equitable because it allowed for greater resources available for other aspects of the project beyond just the public infrastructure. So the more costly, more expensive public realm ranked worse than the least expensive, and I think from that standpoint as well.
Okay. And then the other thing is more of a comment I was just going to make, because I do think the success of this is going to be so heavily driven by the activation of the park. And for me, it was really important to see that Parks preferred this of the three, which I think is just critical to the success of it. So I just think that's really important to emphasize.
I think we have a good partnership with the Parks Bureau, and both at staff level and with their new director of kind of embracing some of the values that we've seen to date from our stakeholders, and an interest in how do we form a strong partnership to support programming of that space moving forward.
Great. Any other comments? Question? Oh, yes.
I'm just curious, how fixed are the design assumptions around Greyhound bus terminal? Is that like it's staying there, it's not moving?
No, Greyhound owns the property jointly with another private party, and they're interested in selling it. They have been and are increasingly actively looking at really downsizing their footprint that they need for their operations, and so moving more to a Bolt bus model where they have curbside passenger pickup, maybe with a small ticketing kiosk. So they have been increasingly making progress on identifying where they might have a retail storefront in the immediate area, and moving forward, putting their property on the market. So I think the assumption is that that would move forward with a different use going forward.
Yeah, I think it's under this concept, it seems to be kind of a critical bridge between Pearl and Old Town Chinatown. It is sort of the
Yeah, I think this diagram most strongly focuses on the post office property and a little bit on Union Station. We have continued work to do on the other parcels that live within the study area. So Block R that we own, the Union Station, Block Y that's immediately in front of it. I think we need to continue to dig into those much more.
Just from a process perspective, we had 3 concepts and we decided to treat the Greyhound block 3 different ways. So this was the scenario in which we keep the building either in Greyhound use or in some adaptive reuse. We also had one where we cut it up into 2 blocks and had a street going through, and then we had the third concept where it was cut up into a development site, a redevelopment site, but that it didn't have a street going through. That you're looking at this one is just chance. What's shown is not substantively related to the rest of the play concept.
Okay, great. All right. Well, thanks very much. It's a great presentation. Appreciate all your great work and the update. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Would someone like to make a, oh, I'm sorry. Do you have a comment?
Is there an action?
Yes. We have Resolution 7307 endorsing the preferred concept. Would someone like to make a motion to? Yeah.
Make the motion to approve Resolution 7307.
Thank you, sir.
The concept.
Second?
Second.
Second? All right. Any further comments? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Resolution passes. Thank you. All right. So next we have item 7, adopting amendment number 2 for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2018 and ending June 30, 2019, and making appropriations. And Tony Barnes is going to join us. Is he here? Oh, I think he's coming. Tony, welcome.
Pardon my absence.
No worries.
Good afternoon, Chair Cruz, Commissioners, Executive Director Branham, Tony Barnes, Finance Manager, Prosper Portland. And today I'm presenting the second budget amendment for the current fiscal year 18-19, which will likely be our last budget amendment for this fiscal year, with the primary purpose of really, it's a technical amendment to true up our resources and expenditures for the current fiscal year to align our resources with next fiscal year's budget as we finalize next fiscal year's budget. So overall, included in this budget revision, we have updated resources, including updated tax increment proceeds forecast. When we brought forward the revised 1 budget, that was in November, right when the tax increment data, the assessed value data was being finalized by the county. So since then, as we went through the budget process, we know we have updates for the current fiscal year. So there are some changes on tax increment debt proceeds that are being included in this current year forecast that's represented in the resources for this Rev 2 budget amendment. We also have changes in property sale and loan collection estimates. We've gone through a rigorous exercise over the last few months in connection with the Yardi implementation and looking at our properties and identifying where certain revenues are changing and also property expenditures are changing on properties, kind of sharpening the pencil. On project and programs, where most of the changes you'll see in this amendment are updated estimates of current year activity and identifying where we need to largely reduce budgets because we are representing those budgets in next year's proposed budget or later in the 5-year forecast. And I'll talk a little bit more about some of those changes. And then finally, like our projects and programs, the Portland Housing Bureau adjustments, which similarly are going through adjustments with their proposed budget. Summary of our budget monitoring process following budget adoption. With the first budget amendment, we update our cash balances and look at our estimated project and program expenditures. We also trip the budget based on that November budget amendment. And then as we start drafting the budget in November through December, we start taking a harder look at what's happening or not happening this fiscal year, and that helps inform this budget amendment right now. And so we have ongoing monitoring towards June So we're looking at not only what's not happening in budgets, better estimates, what also is perhaps speeding up in some cases. So there are a few adjustments in this budget to add dollars where we have some additional activity to avoid having any over expenditure findings when we go through the year-end audit. Summary of our resources, consolidated. The total revision shows a net change of reduction in $5.8 million in resources, but largely that's represented by a 7.9, close to $8 million reduction in tax increment debt proceeds. That's really a draw on line of credit that's available, but it's not needed. So it's TIF resources that we could access this year that, because the projects it was designated for might not happen until next year, we're going to be not drawing those resources and not incurring any issuance costs until when it's actually needed. The majority of changes offsetting that include anticipated reimbursements remaining from the Parcel 3 housing transaction in South Waterfront, North Macadam. That's anticipated to add back over $1 million. We're recognizing over $800,000 in loan collections, mainly in the form of payoffs that weren't part of the original forecast, and then additional fees and charges that are coming in. We are reducing city general fund resources by $123,000 because it's representing the Brownfields program. It's one-time general fund funds that will be implemented next year, and the mayor's proposed budget includes those funds in next year's budget. On the expenditure side, and I'll walk through a little bit more detail in the next couple of slides, the total reduction is about $71 million, going from $276 to $205 million across the categories of administration, economic development, housing, infrastructure, and redevelopment. So I'll walk through some of those at a high level in the next couple of slides. So administration, it's just a net reduction of about $56,000. We went through an exercise of looking at our department administrative expenses, identifying where there might be some cost savings by year end. We certainly will probably have some additional cost savings at year end, but we just wanted to make sure we have cushion where there's contracts in place. So there's some contracts, for example, our Yardi implementation contract, where we had some additional funds in that contract that won't be spending this year, so we'll reduce that. But offsetting some of the reductions, we did recognize that there might be some increases in our debt management contract with the city. For example, one of the increases, primarily the only increase, is related to a refinancing in the South Park Blocks bond that is occurring this month, where we're incurring some outside counsel and issuance costs with that financing. That's resulting in about an increase of around potentially $10,000. However, out from that financing, we are knitting a couple extra $1 million to go into projects as a result. On economic development, across the different funding sources, this is a net increase of over $500,000. The two increases are primarily in our Economic Development Administration EDA loan fund. There are several loans in the pipeline and that have closed that are dispersing, so we're adding about $200,000 in appropriation there. That's coming out of our contingency and existing funds. And then in our Enterprise Zone programming, the Enterprise Zone Fund, there are several one-time fundings that have been allocated this year, Portland Means Progress and the MPN Tech Assistance. Both of these items are identified in next year's budget in the mayor's proposed budget. So it's kind of jump-starting using the Enterprise Zone funds this year and moving into hopefully the general fund funds next year if that budget gets approved by council. Infrastructure, there's a reduction just under $10 million. These are projects, these are commitments largely related to Lombard and Central East Side. There's also infrastructure dollars that were reserved in South Waterfront for different street improvements that are part of now a broader infrastructure category that's in the 5-year forecast. There was dollars allocated for Sullivan's Crossing Bridge in the Oregon Convention Center fund, about $1 million. That's not happening this year, so those dollars have been consolidated into next year's budget. Total budget's about $2 million. And Leach Botanical Gardens, this is an item that's been in the budget for a number of years, which is not moving forward at this fiscal year, but is still represented in next year's budget. And finally here, the property redevelopment category, the largest category overall, about $55 million of the $70+ million change, is largely represented by dollars Old Town Chinatown investment strategy, both in River District and downtown waterfront funds. We left these dollars in the current year budget all the way through this revision, until this revision, for potential activity that might occur in part of the Old Town Chinatown investment strategy. We're not going to spend those dollars by June 30th, though, so we're moving those into the 5-year forecast. And then also Gateway, the 106th and Halsey project, we were looking at a closing by June 30th. Total budget is approximately $10 million overall. That's looking like more of a summer closing, so after July 1st now. So we're including that as a major item in the proposed budget that's going to council this week. And finally, there's a number of residual lending and grant funds across the district where there's not commitments yet that we're recognizing in the 5-year forecast, moving into the 5-year forecast. So that summarizes at a high level the changes that are included in Exhibit 8 of the attached to the attached resolution. Be happy to take additional questions on the amendment. Okay, thank you very much.
Sorry, no, it wasn't. I was trying to spare you my coughing. All right, that was just, let's see. So actually, that is resolution number 7308. Would someone like to make a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Thank you. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you, Tony.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so that was item 7. Item 8 is an information item, update on the community engagement process for Lentz Town Center Phase 2. And this is Allison Wicks and Talia Martinez. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon, Chair Cruz, Commissioners, Executive Director Brandon. My name is Allison Wicks, and I'm the project manager for the Lentz Town Center Phase 2 project.
Good afternoon, Chair Cruz, Commissioners, Director, Executive Brandon. My name is Talia Martinez, and I'm the Community Engagement Program Manager for Prosper Portland.
Thank you for having us back to share more in depth about the public engagement process for this project. I wanted to pick up where we left off last month. As you've heard from many community members that have given public testimony at board meetings, there are many varying perspectives in the Lentz neighborhood, which came through loud and clear in our public engagement efforts. Today, we're going to share more details about our public engagement process, how we engage with communities of color and highlighted their voices throughout the process, how what we heard from the public process is reflected in the proposed public benefits for the project, and Talia will share lessons learned about from this project and how will inform our future public engagement efforts. So as a reminder, this is our Lentz Town Center Phase 2 timeline. In 2014, the Lentz 5-year action plan was approved by the Prosper Portland Board and City Council. In late 2014, Prosper Portland released a request for interest for 7 acres of properties in Lentz Town Center. From 2016 to 2018, the 4 redevelopment projects known as Lentz Town Center Phase 1 moved forward. And in May 2017, we entered into a memorandum of understanding for Lentz Town Center Phase 2, a 4-acre site at 92nd and Herald. This past fall, we conducted a public engagement process, which included 4 in-language focus groups, 2 small-scale community conversations with Lentz community organizations, a web-based open house, and an in-person open house. Next month, we're expecting to come back to the board with a term sheet of a development agreement for your approval. And if we move forward on that timeline, the project would go through design review this summer and start construction in early 2020. The development of the Lentz 5-year action plan set the framework for the future of the Lentz Town Center area at 92nd and Foster. The community engagement for the Lentz 5-year action plan was conducted in partnership with city bureaus and consisted of 4 large-scale open houses, and we worked with Verde and the Lentz Listening Project to reach renters and communities of color. Over a 2-year community engagement process to inform the action plan, we had over 300 participants at community events. The primary actions for the 92nd and Foster area included activating and redeveloping Prosper Portland-owned sites in the town center. Phase 1 took long vacant sites in the historic heart of the Lentz neighborhood and reactivated them, in some cases with temporary uses like the Lentz Story Yard by Propel Studios and the Rose Youth Initiative. And then also with the 4 redevelopment projects that we call Lentz Town Center Phase 1. This photo is from the groundbreaking of Lentz Commons in 2016. Phase 1 took vacant land and redeveloped 268 units of housing and over 30,000 square feet of new commercial space. And this is the foundation that we started with for the outreach for Phase 2, which is the last large site owned by Prosper Portland. In launching the outreach for Phase 2, we started with the in-language focus groups. We intentionally worked with these groups up front to shape the community values for the project. We convened 4 in-language focus groups. We chose Spanish, Vietnamese, Chinese, and Russian because of the prevalence of these languages within East Portland and the Lentz community. We worked with the Community Engagement Liaisons program, which is affiliated with the Office of Civic Life. The CELS are experienced city-trained activists who offer public engagement services and interpretation. The CELS recruited participants, provided translation, and brought the food to the meetings. We met at locations selected by the Community Engagement Liaisons where community members already gather and at times of day that are best for participants, such as the Nak Chau Buddhist Temple after Sunday services. And we provided gift certificates for all participants. Some key themes that we heard in these conversations included rents are too high, the need for housing for larger families, long wait lists that they hear about affordable units too late in the process, that they'd like to see housing with a mix of income, play areas that are for children that are safe, a place for the community to gather, parking, and diverse businesses and affordable groceries. There's obviously a lot more in those conversations, and I can provide you with more details if you're interested in the specific notes from each of those groups. These focus groups shaped the values, which were the foundation for the rest of the public engagement process. The rest of our process included 2 community conversations with Lentz community organizations, the web-based open house, and an in-person open house. Through these conversations, we identified community priorities and then had those groups help us translate those priorities into public benefits. This is kind of a high-level numerical summary, but we had 55 participants in the in-language focus groups, and our largest event was the open house with 104 participants. For the open house, we mailed over 4,000 postcards to neighbors and businesses in about a 1-mile radius from the site and sent out over 1,000 emails to our Lentz email list. Across all of the public events, we provided 232 meals and 12 hours of childcare services. In addition to these formal ways of community participation, I also had numerous additional touches and conversations with Lentz stakeholders, including emails, requests for information, phone calls, and in-person meetings, specifically with members of the Lentz Strong Housing Team, the Lentz Neighborhood Association, and the Lentz Neighborhood Livability Association. The public engagement process shaped and changed the plan and vision for the Lentz Town Center Phase 2 site and directly informed the public benefits. As a baseline, the project would see Prosper Portland and City of Portland policies as their public benefits, so the business equity and workforce equity policies, the green building policy, and the City of Portland's inclusionary housing policy. But additional public benefits, which we discussed last month, that we're continued to work through with Palindrome, are additional affordability and family-sized units, public space, so a permanent public gathering space and a home for the Lentz International Farmers Market, and a place for public art, and then commercial space that supports diverse businesses and the Green Lentz Tool Library, which currently exists on the site. And then for equitable development, looking to share information about available apartments in partnership with the Lentz community, and then to focus on tenanting commercial space with underrepresented businesses and business owners of color. So our next steps will to come back next month with a term sheet and ask the board to take action to authorize the negotiation and execution of a development agreement, which will include a real estate transaction, likely a loan, and then the set of public benefits, and then continue to share updates on the public engagement process. With that, I'll pass it over to Talia to share about lessons learned from the public outreach process.
Thank you. So the focus of my role is to help refine and improve the agency's existing approach to community engagement. I'll be working with my colleagues on Prosper Portland Social Equity Policy and Communications team to update our engagement policies, our best practices, our guidelines, and we will have a more detailed approach to share in the future. And as Allison has shared, the outreach efforts in Lentz has spanned many years and resulting in extensive input from the community. From this process, there are takeaways that we will incorporate into the agency's future engagement practices, and there are lessons learned in areas where we will adjust and change our approach. One of the highlights of the efforts was the creative activation of Lentz sites where photos of local entrepreneurs were posted alongside a visible corridor. This elevated the focus on local community members and engaged community in a thoughtful way. Staff's responsiveness to the community has worked to build transparency into this process and will work to incorporate additional feedback opportunities. Through the Lentz outreach efforts, we've learned that setting ground rules at public meetings help to create shared expectations that lead to a more deep and meaningful conversation between community members and staff. And we want to help to ensure that the public engagement opportunities we create are safe and inviting spaces for varying views and voices. As you know, we've heard criticisms about the outreach efforts to minority stakeholders, and moving forward, we will work to add additional culturally specific learnings and relevant outreach opportunities that increase participation among underrepresented populations. Our goal is to amplify and lift the vulnerable voices in our communities, and we hear the feedback, and we can do more. We thank the Lentz community for being engaged in this process and for helping to inform our future engagement work. And if you have any questions for us.
Great, thank you. Any questions, comments?
Thank you.
All right, great job. Thank you so much. Okay, so our next item is an update on the status of tax increment finance in the city of Portland. And then we have two related or quasi-related action items after that. So, Justin is going to join us. Justin and Tony Barnes.
Chair Cruz, Commissioners, Executive Director Branham, Justin Douglas, Policy Research and Compliance Manager. We're running really ahead of schedule. Wasn't anticipating being ready to go at 4:15, so you'll excuse my rustiness. Tony and I are here today to provide an update on the status of tax increment financing across the city of Portland. And I'll provide some kind of high-level snapshots. Tony will get into some more details. And then this is also within the context of two requests that we would like to make of you this afternoon, which would have the board approve amendments to two urban renewal plans. And we can talk about those a little bit more later. But the context is also that in some of the briefings with the commissioners in prior months, we've also alluded to some community conversations about the expanded and new use of TIF in neighborhoods across Portland. And we wanted to give you kind of a flyby of what some of those conversations are, particularly because you'll likely be hearing more about them in the next couple of months. So before we get into the update on tax increment financing, I wanted to spend a few minutes to talk about urban renewal and to talk about tax increment financing. And I think it is really important that we do spend some time thinking about the words that we use around this, because they're just not the same thing. So urban renewal is a practice, a top-down, government-led, heavy-handed process that dates back to the 19th century. And it's not an American phenomenon. Places like London and Paris were the first places that really used what we now know as urban renewal as a tool. So if you have ever walked the grand boulevards of Paris and admired at their beauty, those are also places where people used to live and where neighborhoods used to reside that were taken from them by the government to make to build grand boulevards. And this is not just unique to Paris. You see these types of projects all across the world. Now, the use of urban renewal became more prevalent in the 20th century in the United States in kind of a distinctly decentralized, yet still federally sanctioned, and really an overtly racist way. And this was mostly codified in federal legislation like the Housing Act of 1949, which essentially provided loans to local municipalities to use eminent domain, to take private property and then repurpose it for what were seen as public goals at the time, things like public housing and streets. But this really accelerated the destruction of communities across our country. And then the 1954 Federal Highway Act basically turned over the authority of managing highways from local governments to the federal government. And the construction of the interstate highway system really physically separated communities from one another all across the country. So places like Pittsburgh and Boston were some of the first municipalities to use urban renewal. In Boston, it's estimated that approximately a third of the city's Old Town was completely razed for new freeways and new subsidized housing and other municipal buildings. And obviously, it had been used in Portland. So the then Portland Development Commission's first urban renewal district, the South Auditorium District, was really traditional urban renewal. And later districts like the Emmanuel District, that was urban renewal. And it's no coincidence that both of those plans were taking property from, in the case of South Auditorium, from Eastern European and Jewish immigrants, to the case of Emmanuel, largely African-American homeowners. And that, again, that was not a coincidence. Prosper Portland has not been an urban renewal agency for a very long time, and I don't think that any of you would have agreed to be on the board if we still practiced those policies, and I don't think we could ever hire somebody with a conscience to work here if we still did that sort of work. But we still use a tool that has been used for decades, and that is the tool of tax increment financing. And we use that tool because it is an extremely precious and valuable tool that we can use to deliver on local objectives. And at Prosper Portland, we do that with an explicit focus on racial equity and constantly asking who is benefiting from these investments. So just for context, Portland is not the only city that has TIF districts. Actually, I'll get to that in a moment. Back to what Prosper Portland does, sometimes I think we do a little bit of a disservice in talking about the limitations of TIF, because while there are geographic limitations that Tony will allude to, and yes, it can only be spent on capital investments, we have been very creative over the years in figuring out ways to use TIF that can deliver on our strategic plan. And it really does deliver on all 4 of these strategic plan objectives. Here's a photo of the foundation being poured at the Alberta Commons project. So the TIF that we use to invest in that project and the property that we owned has helped support construction jobs and permanent jobs on the site. And we also use, or the business and workforce equity programs deliver on construction dollars that we deliver out the door. It is an extremely valuable tool when we're trying to deliver on creating healthy, complete neighborhoods. This is a photo of Gateway Discovery Park, but we also use TIF to invest in things like the Broadway corridor. We use TIF to fund recipients through the Community Livability Grant Program. So it's extremely valuable for creating healthy, complete neighborhoods. We've used it to create wealth opportunities for business owners. This is a snapshot of some folks enjoying the Portland Mercado in the Lentz TIF district. And we also use TIF to advance partnerships. And these can be public partnerships. The board recently approved a governmental agreement with the Portland Bureau of Transportation to build a much-needed pedestrian and bicycle bridge over I-84, the Sullivan's Crossing. But then we also use it with neighborhood partners like the folks here at our 42nd Avenue to allow them to invest small TIF grants into the projects that are really important in their neighborhoods. So back to my earlier comment, this is not just a Portland tool. So this is a map that shows all of the municipalities across the state of Oregon that use TIF, and they're using it to deliver on the same sort of challenges that we are facing here in Portland: affordable housing, insufficient infrastructure, business growth, job growth. So communities from Lebanon to La Grande, we have counties, Columbia County, Hood River County, and they're using TIF. Now their challenges might be different, but the tool is the same. So I'm going to turn it over to Tony, and he's going to talk about the status of TIF within the city of Portland.
Great. Thanks, Justin. So turning it back to current TIF districts in Portland, there's currently 16 active districts, as shown on the map here. 4 of those districts identified in blue are active plans, but they have reached their last date to issue debt. Those include South Park Blocks, Downtown Waterfront, Oregon Convention Center, Airport Way districts. So they're in the process of defeasing remaining bonds that were outstanding, as well as spending any final proceeds, or since the plans continue, spending program income in those districts from the assets in the district. There's also 6 districts shown, I think it's the gold color, that are active districts: Central East Side, North Macadam, River District, Interstate, Lentz, and Gateway, that continue to issue debt. They haven't reached their maximum indebtedness yet, and have active plans moving forward. And then also the final 6 districts are the NPI districts shown in green: 42nd Avenue, Colley, Park Rose, Rosewood, J, Division, Midway, which also are active and still issuing tax increment debt. So the Oregon state law defines how much of a jurisdiction in terms of acreage and assessed value can be utilized by TIF districts. It's basically 15% of the city area in terms of acreage and 15% of the assessed value. So these numbers, the top row, illustrate the total acreage in the city of Portland, 92,773 acres, and total assessed value, that's taxable assessed value of $55.6 billion. The next line down illustrates what 15% of that number is. So the limit in Portland for TIF districts is 13,916 acres and 8.3 billion in assessed value. Currently utilized from those active districts that are still being implemented, that are still collecting tax increment resources to pay off debt. It's about 11,399 acres, or 12.3% of the total, and $4.8 billion in assessed value, about 8.6 of the total assessed value. That leaves about 2,500 acres available and $3.5 billion in assessed value for additional TIF districts. This next graph illustrates of the active TIF districts total maximum indebtedness. That's illustrated by the gray bar, the gray portion of each bar, what was established in the plan for each district. The green area illustrates what's left of the maximum indebtedness that can be issued. That's the amount that's actually in our budget and 5-year forecast for new TIF debt proceeds that are going to be coming in over the next few years based on financial capacity. You'll see that a couple districts have a couple different areas. Gateway, the portion of the bar chart that's white on the right side, that illustrates what we think the district has in maximum indebtedness that might not be issued by the time it reaches its last day to issue debt, which is 2022. The years on the side of each bar chart, the first number is the year, the last year to issue debt for each district. The second date is when that total debt in the district is anticipated to be paid off. So in the case of Gateway, the last date is 2022, that it won't reach its maximum indebtedness. The forecast is that it would leave $64 million on the table of the maximum indebtedness. Of the bonds that are outstanding or will be issued, it won't be defeased until 2030, or the debt won't be paid off until 2030. That's that second date. So when we look at defeasance and debt being paid off, what that means is that the incremental assessed value, once the debt's paid off in each district, will be returned to the overlapping taxing jurisdictions. And basically, the incremental assessed value multiplied by the permanent rate for each district creates new general fund resources for each district. So this graph illustrates, this chart illustrates what the city general fund forecast is as each district is defeased and the bonds are paid off. For first, Airport Way in 2021, as the revenue's coming back, River District in 2023, and then Interstate and Central East Side in 2024. Going out to 2031 would be the last anticipated time, Gateway being the last district paying off debt. Fiscal year 2021 with Airport Way, it's roughly $500,000 in new general fund resources. Out to 2031-32, it climbs to about over $50 million in new general fund resources. And that's about 1/4 of the total, since this is just looking at the city's portion. Looking at a major amendment process we went through over the last, about 4 years ago, 2015. One of Mayor Hale's major initiatives was to take a look at all the TIF districts and identify opportunities for optimization, where dollars could be potentially reduced or returned back to taxing jurisdictions sooner. So we took a very comprehensive look at all the districts. We identified several areas where districts would be reduced, but also a couple areas where they would be increased or extended to try to focus on priorities. The two areas that were reduced, Airport Way and River District, about 40% of the assessed value in Airport Way was reduced. In River District, we took out, the council amended the district to take out about 26% of the amended plan value. This was a major impact to reduce, to return incremental value back to the districts. Now, there was no impact to either district in actually implementing the plan or cutting project budgets, because in Airport Way, it already issued all the debt. In River District, there was so much financial capacity in the district that the 26% reduction allowed it to continue, but still freed resources for the overlapping districts. Two districts were closed, were eliminated. Willamette Industrial was amended to stop collecting new tax increment revenues. The plan continues today. There's about $4 million in existing resources available to continue the plan objectives, but dollars from that district were returned to the taxing jurisdiction, new dollars. And then the education URA was a relatively new district. That district was eliminated completely. However, 35 acres were added to North Macadam as part of the amendment process in order to fund priorities that were in the education district. And finally, 2 districts were extended or expanded, Central East Side. The increase in maximum indebtedness of 20% went from $105 million to $126 million. We also extended the last date to issue debt from fiscal year 17-18 to 22-23 in order to get to that maximum indebtedness. And in North Macadam, it was expanded by 45 acres. As noted, about 35 was related to going into the area previously part of the education URA to fund agreements with PSU and other commitments. Yeah.
What was the rationale for terminating the education district? It had a short life.
Yeah, we identified primarily the objectives. Our agreement with our partnership with PSU was the real commitment on the table. The only commitment I think we had established, Kimberly can help me out here, which could be included in the maximum indebtedness, the financial capacity of North Macadam with that extension.
Yeah, so I think Mayor Hales asked us to take a comprehensive look and particularly to look at where urban renewal, where TIF was the right tool. And I think there was a feeling that in an area that was as built out as the area surrounding Portland State University, that TIF was potentially not the ideal tool. And so as we looked to what the commitments had been with PSU, most of those were rolled into the North Macadam TIF district. And so I think that was largely the thrust of it.
And I'll add, the council was very, wanted to make sure that the taxing jurisdictions were made whole through this amendment process. And what you'll see when Tony gets to the next slide is that by closing down the education district, the long-term financial upside to the taxing jurisdictions was very significant. So we were able to maintain some of the priorities, the geographic priorities, but then really relieve any sort of longer-term financial obligations on the taxing jurisdictions.
Perfect segue. There we go. This was the estimated impact that we calculated in 2015, impacts to the TIF districts and the benefits to the taxing jurisdictions as a result. So this was looking at a 25-year span of time between, I think, 2015 and 2040 or so. But these numbers are in 2015 dollars, so it's a present value figure of $88 million was the net benefit across all the amendments that benefited the City of Portland, Multnomah County, the State School Fund, and Multnomah County Library in total. The top numbers represent where the impact was generated. So most of the impact was generated by eliminating that education URA by $81 million. And then the River District, $38 million, but that was offset by increasing the length of, or the time, the last date to issue debt in North Macadam by adding additional capacity in North Macadam. So it was a switch of priorities that resulted in $88 million in net benefit over time to the taxing jurisdictions. And I'm going to hand it back to Justin to talk about upcoming discussions around districts and amendments.
And before we go there, just this particular amendment process, which was significant, obviously addressing 6 different districts, just to give you a kind of a sense of the time, I would say that the date from when the City Council and the board first kind of directed staff to pursue this to when the ordinances and resolutions were approved was probably about 18 months. So when we're making amendments of this size, they entail a significant amount of community outreach and process that we can get into detail with you at other times, but that's just kind of the nature of TIF amendments. Some require a lot of process, others can be done quickly through actions by the board. So as Tony mentioned, I wanted to provide an update on just some current conversations that we're having with community partners. The first that I'll mention is in Cully. So the little snapshot on the right is a letter that we received earlier this year in January from a coalition of partners in Cully representing 7 organizations: so Native American Youth and Family Center, Hacienda CDC, Living Cully, Verde, Habitat for Humanity, and then the 2 neighborhood prosperity network districts located in this neighborhood, our 42nd Avenue and Cully Boulevard Alliance. And really, the conversations that we've been having with those partners is for them to better understand how, with the kind of the pressures of the market pushing on this neighborhood, how TIF as a potential tool might be able to be something that they could use to address concerns about affordable housing, about affordable housing preservation, about affordable commercial and job growth. So we have just been in very early kind of constructive conversations with them. I would imagine that there might be some time later this summer where we'll bring up the partners to the board to engage with you so they can share some of the things that they have learned. I think it's very fair to say that they are not confident that, or they have not made a decision that this is something that they want to pursue. They're in an exploration process to understand what needs there are in their community, to look at things like what types of projects could be funded with TIF resources. But it's very exciting because it's a process that they've brought to us and it's something that they want to explore further. The second conversation is a little different in that it hasn't really been generated by community groups in a particular neighborhood, but more because of the emergence of what could be a massive investment in a light rail project down the Barber Boulevard corridor that would run from downtown Portland all the way to the Tiger Triangle. It's currently expected that should it be funded, a MAX line could open in 2027, which obviously seems like a long way away. But there are already conversations about how to ensure that if the light rail line is to be built, that the city and other partners are able to ensure that we don't kind of relive some of the lessons of past light rail line expansion. So, for example, in autumn of 2018, the Portland City Council adopted the Equitable Development Strategy, and this was a document that was signed by the Portland Housing Bureau, Prosper Portland, TriMet, other partners that basically laid out expectations about how we could collectively secure land in advance of the light rail construction to deliver on affordable housing and affordable commercial priorities. The city has also been having active conversations about how to fund the local match in order to secure federal resources to fund the construction of the MAX line. The city of Portland has to come, and its other partners, jurisdictional partners, has to come up with a local match as it has done in previous light rail expansion projects. So we've been participating in these conversations to both talk about how a new TIF district could deliver on affordable housing and affordable commercial activities. So you'll see over there, that's just kind of a very rough map that looks at that's a roughly 900-acre TIF district up and down the corridor, and the amount of resources that could be generated that would be split between the Portland Housing Bureau and Prosper Portland. No decisions have been made yet, but these are ongoing conversations, and I would expect that we'll be sharing more with you in the next few months. And then the third is the interstate corridor. Obviously, last month, yes, the Prosper Portland Board approved a minor amendment to include properties that the Portland Housing Bureau could deliver on affordable home ownership opportunities. But there's also been conversations about the potential to increase maximum indebtedness, and this could be a significant way to generate resources to deliver on both the North-Northeast Neighborhood Housing Strategy and the North-Northeast Community Development Initiative Action Plan. However, in both of those cases, we are really following the lead of the Housing Strategy Oversight Committee and our CDI Oversight Committee. If this is something that they want to pursue in order to advance the goals in each of those plans, we'll work with them to pursue that. But they're both kind of at different points on that conversation. And then obviously, there have been conversations for some time about expanding the boundary of the interstate corridor to include the Hill Block property. So that could be another amendment or action that comes to the board in the near future. So those are three kind of current conversations. Tony and I are happy to engage on questions about the presentation that we just gave, and then I can move into the action items that we would like to propose today.
What would be the timeline for the creation of the new TIF districts?
So similar to the amount of time that I mentioned with that Sixth Amendment process, I would say from the day at which the board kind of gave its blessing, and we want City Council to bless it as well, to when resources started generating through a new district could be as it would be no sooner than 12 months. It could be upwards of 18 months, depending on the amount of public process involved. So it's a significant amount of time.
Justin, can you, just as a follow-up on that one, so I think we have had conversations with Cully about a fairly significant community engagement process that they want to go through. And I think we've also communicated to our partners that we don't right now have the acreage available to move forward with a new district in the Southwest Corridor. Can you talk a little bit about some of the timing considerations there?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Kimberly. So as Tony had on his slide that showed the amount of acreage that's currently available, it's about 2,500 and change. When the conversations about the Southwest Corridor began to really become more prevalent over the last 18 months or so, we communicated to our public partners that we really intended to reserve those 2,500 acres to our partners in East Portland, and that when the Airport Way District expires in 2021, there will be approximately another 1,000 acres, I believe, that will come back onto the roll. So by the time, like if we were to go through the process of exploring a Cully TIF district and reserve the 2,500 acres for Cully or for East Portland, and then new acreage were to come online in a couple of years, that could provide the amount of space available to create a potential new Southwest Corridor district. Did that make sense? Okay.
Other questions, comments? No? No? Okay.
It was really good.
Yeah, it was really helpful. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for allowing me to editorialize on urban renewal for a moment.
Appreciate that.
We'll all eliminate urban renewal from our vocabulary, right?
Well,
Unless we want to talk transparently about the racist history of it.
I'm happy to do that. The challenge is that the next two items that appear in front of you are about amending urban renewal plans, and that's what we are currently required by state statute to call these things that guide our work in the city of Portland. So it's a term that still lives with us, but it doesn't really accurately reflect what we do. So the two amendments are very similar. The first that we'll present to you would be the 21st Amendment to the Oregon Convention Center Urban Renewal Plan. And essentially what this action would do would be, it would amend the plan to acknowledge that there could be future investment in a public building. So this is a requirement of state statute that if an urban renewal plan is created and there is some intention of investing in a public building, then that public building needs to be identified when the plan is adopted. Now, the Oregon Convention Center plan was adopted in the 1980s. And at that point, nobody was even contemplating a project called 100 Multnomah, which obviously staff have engaged with you on many times over the last couple of months. So what this amendment would say, this is an amendment to the Oregon Convention Center plan that acknowledges that 100 Multnomah could be a public building if Prosper Portland were to own the building, if Prosper Portland were to own condominium space, if other public partners were to own condominium space. So it does not commit the board to do anything about 100 Multnomah specifically. It just allows in the future, should that project advance, it would be consistent with the Oregon Convention Center urban renewal plan. Now, this also is an action that would require City Council to vote on it as well, and we have time scheduled on their June 2019 docket. And you'll hear, you've heard quite a bit about this in the past, but obviously the 100 Multnomah project, were to move forward, does address strategic plan goals of providing jobs and also creating kind of a new and healthy neighborhood in inner Northeast Portland. Now, the 13th Amendment to the South Park Blocks Urban Renewal Plan would do something similar. It would amend the South Park Blocks plan to include the Central Library. This is the Multnomah County Central Library as a public building. Tony can talk to you about some of the specifics, but we have recently identified that there's approximately $3 million available in resources that we could invest in the South Park Blocks. And should the board later this summer, we would approach the board later this summer with an intergovernmental agreement with Multnomah County to invest in critical improvements to the library, which really serves a diverse constituency. There's some details in your report about the folks who use the library services. This action would again amend the plan to acknowledge that the library is a public building that could be invested in the South Park Blocks. So again, this would require future city council action, and staff would come to you at some point this summer, should this move forward, with an agreement with the county that would outline the terms and conditions for that investment in the library. And again, a investment of this size has a ability to generate considerable job growth, and it's a partnership with the county to fund the project. That's very important to them, and we feel like we have resources that we can assist. So that's the context. I didn't go into a great detail on either of those, but happy to respond to any questions.
What were you don't have to get super detailed, but what were the nature of some of the improvements to the library that are being contemplated?
They're detailed in your report, but there are some HVAC improvements. There's also, they're making investments in what are known as quiet rooms, and these are small spaces that allow smaller groups of people to congregate that are, they don't have, there's a shortage of those across the library system. But the report goes into details and some of the specifics. And should we take an intergovernmental agreement to you this summer, we'll go into greater detail on some of those improvements.
Just some of those things include a failing electrical transformer and a remedy associated heating, ventilation, air conditioning issues, and some emergency exit path improvements, just for the record.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Great. Any other comments, questions? And I'm
Just want to ask about the public process for this. It seems like a no-brainer to us, but I know in the past, well, I don't know, I guess just the community participation to add this. We haven't done anything officially. When it goes to the board, there'll be a it'll be public notification about it.
On the South Park Blocks?
When it goes to city council, sorry.
Yes, there will be an opportunity.
Lloyd one.
For the Lloyd.
For the Lloyd one.
Yes, that's right. There will be an opportunity for constituents to testify at City Council as well. The library project, I think it is described in the report. There was a considerable process done by the county to work with constituents to identify improvements across their network of facilities. But that item also will come to council with an opportunity for public comment as well.
And I just want to augment that point, because I think that when we initially tried to add the Hill Block into the interstate TIF, there you go, TIF district, that there was some concern from the community that it was sort of done in a backhanded manner. And I think it was important that you made the distinction between urban renewal and TIF, because while the practices are different, the tool is still the same, and I think people do attach, and so it's going to be important, I think, to keep repeating that. And so it is going to be important to not give the appearance that we're sort of adding things in without opportunities for folks to comment on, because that was really a big deal, and that's what pushed us back. And it's still a pretty, I would say, heated discussion, and folks have used narrative like TIF is a, what do they call it, a weaponized tool. I don't necessarily, that's very strong language, but I think that these are the things that we will have to sort of consider, making sure that it doesn't look like we're just adding things in afterwards and, oop, approve it, that there's a public process and space for comment.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Other comments? Questions? No? Okay, well, thanks very much. It was a great presentation. So I'm excited about the library improvements. It's great. Yep. All right. Okay.
So I'm sorry, these are action items?
Yes.
To approve?
Yes.
So I just for point of clarification, there will be a public process for comments on things like 100 Multnomah?
Yes, I mean, obviously, there's an opportunity for comment today, and there will be an opportunity for public comment at the council meetings in June.
So just to augment, and Amy Nagy is here, and she's the relationship manager for the Oregon Convention Center. So she's had some conversations with Lloyd District members who have weighed into 100 Multnomah. And I don't know, I think she can speak to the conversations that have taken place. But we will make sure that people who are key stakeholders are aware of this, and people who've been watching. I think I will have to think about within the South Park blocks if there's a standing meeting, or we can kind of think about what that engagement is, but appreciate that reminder, and we'll figure out how to more proactively engage.
Yeah, I think doing it before the city council meeting, I think, is critical.
Yep.
Great. All right, then. So why don't we just go ahead and vote on these two resolutions together? If nobody has any objections. Would someone like to make a motion to approve resolution number 7309 and resolution number 7310?
So moved.
Thank you. Second? Do we have a second? Second, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. All right, thanks
Thank
very
you.
much. Yeah, appreciate it. Okay, so next, we're going to go into executive session, so I will adjourn. We are adjourning the Prosper Portland Board meeting for the moment, and we will convene our executive session next.